Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Only Murders in the Building Season 3 finale. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, getting that opening with Donna was kind of all that solidified. Like, alright, so it seems like my theory about what went down seemed like it was pretty on par, just with that opening of like, right, she had such a big career, and for her, like, the greatest thing she'd ever, I think she's like, oh, the greatest thing I ever did was like Mamma Mia, which I was like, I don't know if that's in correlation of just like, yes, like, I'm a mom now, this is the greatest thing I've ever made and done, so that, like I said, that solidified things, or was that supposed to be a play on words like, oh, I made Mamma Mia because I ended up having a kid, which I was like, I just thought about that too. I'm like, wasn't Meryl Streep in Mamma Mia? Was it one or two, or was she in both? I don't remember. I've seen previews, but I've never seen either movie. I wonder, was that a play first? Or was that a Broadway thing first, or was it a movie first? So it was a musical first, and yes, she was, I guess that was also the correlation there too, because she was in both of the movies. Because if I remember correctly, she was like the main character, wasn't it? Wasn't she the mama in this situation? Either way, tensions and all that aside, I can't believe that just clicked in my head just now. Anyway, tangents and all that aside. So I like where we kind of go. We got Loretta there being like, hey, oh my God, I get to see you guys kind of in action as they're kind of figuring things out, because they're like, right, we believe Donna did it. We're laying out why she did it, but the thing is, they don't have any hard evidence until Loretta brings out the handkerchief, because it's what Dickie gave her, because he's like, I don't know if this will like incriminate you, but I think it was his way of saying like, hey, like, I don't think you killed Ben. I'm by your side, and maybe kind of also understanding why, because he wasn't sure. He even admits it later on, but there was a part of him that kind of knew on some level that that connection they've kind of built over these past 4 months. It really kind of was like, right, the way you talk to me, he's like, he felt it. I was actually kind of scared. I'll go ahead and admit, I was scared he was going to misinterpret that situation. I was like, please don't tell me you're going to try and kiss her, because that would be weird. And she had to be like, no, I'm your mother. He's like, oh. They could have easily gone that route comedy bit, but it would have been weird. So I think they wanted to keep that moment sweet and sincere, but they could have easily gone down that route, because I thought that's the route they were going to go, where he was going to misinterpret that situation. But it's like, no, they immediately nailed of like, yeah, I felt that son-mother connection we had. So, like I said, it was just kind of a sweet moment. But that's me jumping ahead with a lot of stuff. But either way, it's officially opening night. Jonathan can't perform because, hey, turns out Ben's concoction was a little too much for him. Or maybe it's because he took it a step further because he's so nervous. I mean, to be fair, Jonathan made it clear he didn't want to do this. He's only doing it kind of for Howard, because Howard's living vicariously through him. Which I feel so bad for Howard, because I don't know if this is what Howard planned or not, but Howard's like, right, there's someone who didn't want the spotlight. He puts that hat on like, hey, it should be me, because Howard wants this. Him and KT had that beautiful moment a couple episodes back of like, right, he wanted to be the leading man in something, but trauma from his mom telling him he is not good enough has made him not go down that route. And KT wants to direct one, so I think she might not just be like a Broadway production. It might also just be anything in general. But she wants to be in the director's seat. But for jumping ahead once again a little bit, I was not expecting Oliver to snatch the reins from the whole situation. I mean, Howard seemed like he was fine with it. Not unless that is what Howard was planning, but I'm assuming not. I thought the whole point would, but it's like, maybe he was like, nah, actually, I want to, but I can't go through with it, so he gave it to Oliver. But most likely, Oliver was like, you're right, Howard, I should be the one to do this. This is my baby, so I should be the one taking the reins. But like I said, Howard didn't seem resentful, so it seemed like maybe he was okay with that. We'll have to probably wait to see in the future whether or not that ends up actually being the case or not. But I love the whole, right, they've got everything prepared. They're ready to try and get Donna's confession, because they believe they have all they need to take her down now. And so they get ready for the like confession as she walks in on it because they're like set it up to be like, oh, Maxine's new review came in. You might want to get an early peek of it, you know. And lo and behold, they're there. And I love that they've got the cards ready because they are recording this for the podcast. So they're like making sure they got all the words right. I didn't notice it until rewound that you just see Meryl. I mean, not Meryl. God, I don't know why I said Meryl. Mabel is looking down at her hands. There's even a point where like Oliver steps back behind Charles and is reading the notes off his back. And she's just, and Donna's just like, all right, this is god awful painful. You think I poisoned Ben? Yes, you're right. And they're like, oh. And Mabel's just like, why did I write all these cards then? She's like, yes, I poisoned Ben, but I wasn't trying to kill him. I was just trying to remove him from the equation. But the fact of the matter is, you just don't know how much rat poison is going to take someone like Ben out. She's like, how many rats is a Ben Glenroy? And I love that Oliver just kind of look almost like, that kind of makes sense. I was like, interesting. So you weren't planning on killing him. You just wanted him so sick that he couldn't perform. Because once again, he was the worst part of like Maxine's review. We still never found out about Charles. Charles must have been like the second worst thing. But it's like, because once again, Mabel stopped Charles from reading the review. So he must have gotten gutted in that review or something like that. But either way. But she's like, yeah, I didn't want him removed from the situation. It's also like, where's the mic? It's underneath the cookies, isn't it? It's like and it's like, wow, that actually would have been smart, but no, it's just Taubert in the corner, like behind the door. What's the point of having him covered in stuff? I guess they were thinking like still, because I guess you would assume they planned it out so that when the door opened that he'd be, because they were stopping Donna like right there at the doorway. But I'm like, what would be the point of like covering him in clothes and stuff if like the moment you close the door, he's behind there, like you could easily shenanigans, I guess. But it's not until they really push for Donna being like, oh yeah, like you're the killer because we have this handkerchief, we have Ben's handkerchief that has your shade of lipstick on it. And that moment I was like, that solidifies it right there. It was Cliff. And you could tell in that moment Mabel was kind of confused because she was like, she didn't want to bring anything up, but it was like, you could tell she was like, nah, that seemed too easy. Because even they were like, usually it's like a very roundabout way. It's like, yeah, that's your classic style of like, usually we don't nail it like that the first time. It's usually like they said it early on. I'm like, yeah, we usually kind of have to go about a roundabout thing to find a killer. Even this situation, we had to go about a roundabout way to find a killer. But it's, we got it in one. But it's like, you can tell Donna's confession, but she also admitted she has cancer. And so for her, it's like, this is my son's big, his first Broadway show. So I want this to go without send the cops for me afterwards. So can you do this one promise to me, Oliver? Because I took a chance on you when no one else would. So do me this favor. Because obviously for her, it's like, it also means a lot because, it's not just her son's name on it, it's hers. But that's what I was bringing up last episode. I wasn't sure she was just doing this for her son or was she doing it because her name is technically tied to it because her son's name tied to it. But it's like, no, it's because she cares that much about her son. Because it has and always will be about him because of their relationship and everything. So just that weird mother son relationship. Once again, it's like I think it's just meant to be that contrast between Dickie and Loretta's relationship versus theirs, just how one is so, despite the circumstances, is so normal compared to one that is so absolutely not normal. I love that what's his face, who had been basically staying in the rafters or whatever of the place. I forgot his name, but he's the dude that Oliver talked to a couple episodes ago. He's sitting in the seat up beside Matthew Broderick and Uma. And it was just like, I hate theater, but I'm only here because I'm so fucking supportive. And I also love that she constantly goes Matthew Broderick. And it's like, I think it is that thing of like, well, you can't just call him Matthew. You kind of have to say Matthew Broderick. He's one of those actors where it's like, I guess you just kind of have to say his full name. Because honestly, it's like, and I love her being like, I wonder if anyone's gonna die. It's like, Oliver's career might die again. And she's like, ooh, you're so clever, Matthew Broderick. And they're just like, cause once Oliver was on stage, it's like, oh wow, he's a quadruple threat. Can't sing, can't dance, can't, act, and can't direct. And it's like, and he's like, oh, you're a lot of fun. And she's just kind of smiling. I'm like, is that going to become a thing now or something? It's like, I felt stupid because I was like, right, he's married. I mean, I'd assume that applied even to the fictitious version of his character, because he is playing himself. So I'm like, right, because him and Sarah Jessica Parker. But maybe it's just the birth of a good, cynical friendship of just kind of like, yeah, we both kind of disdain Oliver a little bit so we can bond over that. And maybe they're just very... I think maybe that's supposed to also be that interesting like juxtaposition of friendship or something like that. I don't know. That's what I kind of read that as. Not unless the two of them are like friends in real life or something like that. Maybe that's also what that's supposed to be, like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Or maybe they've worked together in the past. I don't know. But going back to that sweet moment between Loretta and Dickie, the fact is that Mabel overhearing that and then also seeing Donna talking to Cliff, it's what really finally clicked it all together for her. Because for her, it was a situation of like that, especially that point in the play, plus what was going on with real life between Loretta and Dickie, that it finally clicked in her head, because it's like, okay, so at that time I thought he was saying like, hey, I have, like, I wonder, does he know that his mom has cancer? He says later on that like, oh she told me that she was going to confess to the crime, but Mabel ended up confronting him, and he was in the attic area, like he was about to jump down and fall. I even love later he's asking, it's like, oh, is this where the mermen from Splash, where they hide? Is this how high they were when he fell? He's like, no, you're actually a little higher, son. He's like, so would it not be painful if I fell from here? It's like, no, if you listen to them, you could tell they were in excruciating pain. It is kind of sad and like, obviously like over the top dramatic of like how he's just like hanging and like, oh, setback, I'm going to fall. I'm going to ruin this play. This is going to be the kind of like for lack of a better term, the splash of this play. You know, it's going to be quite the splash, rather, I should say. But you get the double entendre and play on words I'm trying to make with the exact same thing happening in Splash and this being a spot. Yes, I just failed at it. I stumbled my words and didn't phrase it the right way for the double entendre to really sit. That was my fault. But either way, we kind of got his perspective on things, because it turns out that night of the party, Ben, after he revealed himself, like, oh, I'm still alive, turns out Ben talked to his doctor and was like, yeah, you had rat poison in your system. And my thing last episode, I was like, okay, so could it be his body has such a tolerance to the rat poison because he ended up, because his body's used to the concoction that he had in his system? Stupid me not thinking about the fact is he would already have the concoction. Well, if either he took the concoction beforehand, or because we never saw him actually take it last episode when we were getting those flashbacks. So it's most likely a situation of he probably already had it in his system, maybe. But it's like, yeah, because he already had his concoction in his system, which also includes a little Viagra, apparently. That's the only reason why he survived. Because even Donna, like I brought up earlier, Donna was like, I actually don't know how much poison. It was just enough to knock him on his ass. It probably would have killed him if it wasn't, because she probably didn't know about his leading man drug. But yeah, if it wasn't for that, he probably would have died. So, but I love that he's actually piecing it together about like, it's funny enough that he's, the detective in the play and everything, and here he is, the actual one, figuring out the moment Cliff like gave him the clues of like, wait, he's like, wait, you brought me the cookies. He said, no, the cookies were my mom's idea, like they weren't mine. And it's like, wait, your mom poisoned me. He's like, no, she wouldn't do that. And he's like, right, she's the one that led me, told me to go in my room and take care of myself, and the cookie was there waiting for me. And I love that he's like, oh, your mom's going to jail for a long time. He's like, yeah, 911. How do you call them? I was like, Jesus, Ben, you were that helpless. But it's also for Cliff, it's just like, right, you're there calling me boy. It's like Ben's dickishness did not help him in the long run. I mean, because for Cliff, this was his moment of, I mean, for one, it's like, hey, I'm protecting my mom, but I'm also caught up in my own emotions because, hey, I'm my own person. Like, he's probably had to deal with so much of, right, my mom's name and who she is, but it's like, right, I'm my own person with my own thoughts. So it's like, because if my mom ever did anything, it was just to protect me. But this is something, it wasn't, I mean, especially because they went back and forth of, you know, because it turns out he never wanted Ben for this role. He's like, my mom probably wanted to protect me because you were probably, it's like, wait, why would your mom want to get rid of me? It's like, probably because you were god awful. It's like, wait, was I the issue with the play? It's like, yeah, you were. In fact, he already knew. He's like, from the beginning, it's like, oh yeah, I never wanted you. I guess like the only reason why Donna picked him, which I guess in the end he was right not to have, if his mom had listened to him and not picked Ben, like it would have been, but I guess it's just, she needed a big enough draw to the play. They needed some real star power, but he wasn't good enough for the play. But like, once again, who knows what he could have done opening night, which I think is that neat parallel of instead of seeing Oliver on the play, all he's seeing is Ben because it's his guilt, but also it is a situation of, because he even says later on that should have been Ben down there tonight. Who knows? He could have brought it opening night. I mean, to be fair, like, maybe if things had played out a little differently, I mean, that opening night was obviously 30 minutes of like opening night was the like rough boom back to back to back, so much stuff happening. But who knows if things had been cleared up, if things had been like a little bit different, what that would have meant for Ben. Like he could have killed it opening night and made, I mean, it worked out in the end in a very, very effed up way. It worked out in the end, but still. But yeah, I think it is just that thing of right. Like, I mean, but if Donna had never chosen Ben, probably wouldn't be in this situation. But, there's also the angle of what also cut deep for Ben is the way that Cliff was talking about him. Because it's like, oh, you're a wannabe hero or something like that. And obviously that cuts deep, we know, because he already has it. I mean, he's a very insecure person already, so that really pushed him to the, because he's always had, like I said, a lot of insecurities built into him, and he never felt like he was good enough. And also, let's not forget, Cobra wasn't his idea, it was Dickie's, so bringing up the superhero stuff and him being kind of a hack, it probably brought that insecurity up and probably cut deep as well. So it's just a back and forth between them, a shoving match of like, oh yeah, your mom's going to go to jail for what she did, and just getting caught up in the moment and pushing and killing Ben. It was an accident, obviously, but Charles was up there with Mabel, and so did Oliver. They all rushed there to help him. But the problem is, it wasn't until Donna showed up, and she's like, "I know, son, it's okay. I'm here by your side." And he's like, "I'm so sorry, Mom." And she's like, "It's okay," And I love the little fist bump of like, "Yeah, we solved this." So Charles fist bumps Oliver, just switches over, and Mabel's just kind of caught up in the moment. She's like, "Fine," and just kind of fist bumps him as well. So bringing this to a close, and both of them get arrested. Like I brought that up last episode because my thing was, I thought Donna, it never crossed my mind that Donna was trying to do that. Like that was a nice twist where it's like, no, she wasn't trying to kill him. Once again, she would have killed him if it wasn't for the concoction already, his leading man concoction in his system. But it's like, she wasn't trying to kill him. But I figured like she'd still go away for attempted murder because it's like, oh, Ben survived. So she didn't murder him, but she attempted to. And I figured Cliff would be arrested. And I love that they end up like, I say love is a strong and weird word to use, but it's like, it's poetic that I brought it up like, yeah, it's poetic that they end up getting, they both go down for this. Cause I figured that's how this was all gonna, so yeah, Donna didn't kill Ben. It was Cliff, like I thought, but for them to kind of kiss and that be their final scene is them being arrested together and like she's going to get a lighter sentence. Plus if we take her words for fact, it does seem like, yeah, she legitimately, because she was like, yeah, I'm not a flight risk because I got cancer. So once again, I don't know if Cliff is aware of that. So she doesn't have long, so she won't go away for that long, but it's going to be heartbreaking because, all right, we go to jail together, and she's probably going to give him the best lawyer she can, because she can make it like, I'm sure it wasn't premeditated murder, so the charges won't be as bad for either one of them, because she attempted murder, but she's also sick. He pushed him, but it was an accident, so a lot of that's probably going to play. Like I said, Donna has the connections to get him a really good lawyer. Because it's probably going to be a thing of, if in the process of it all, like she might, sadly for all we know, she might pass away in that time. Who knows, right? So there's a lot with that situation. So it is this bittersweet, and even the fact is that, when curtain call came, like all of them had to go there. So it's like, right, you're there with Cliff and Donna after that confession and bowing. And I love that you have Howard to the side kind of doing his extra bow, but it's like, yeah. And based on Maxine's review, the whole situation ended up being success. I love that Oliver's like, all right, hold up, I gotta subscribe so I can get the rest of the article. He's like, I could have sworn I had 4 more articles, and Mabel's like, okay, here. But he's like, yeah, congratulations, everyone. It's all a success because of me. So I was like, okay, Oliver taking all the credit, but it is this beautiful moment, but it's also bittersweet because, of course, you're not going to keep a lot of these like characters around because of the actors tied to them being seasonal characters and stuff. So it's like, right. I love that moment between Tauber and Mabel in the hallway where they had previously been like, he was like, yeah, I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those men who talks about his family. He's like, kind of, last of a dying breed. He's like, I think it's me and Liam Neeson. I think we're like the only ones. But he has said that, he's got a gig for an independent film in LA. But, and he wants Mabel to come along. But for her, it's like, regardless of her being stuck, her life is here. For her, she even says later on, the things I need to unstick are all here. She made up with her boys, her besties, and doesn't want to kind of leave them now after that. But it's a lot of stuff here she's got to figure out because this is where her life became, obviously, like, life became so tangled and stuff here. And so what that means for Mabel going forward is going to definitely be interesting to see what she does. And Oliver and Loretta, she gets these offers, but that means she'd have to go to LA. But it's like, hey, you get to go live your dream. So it's a situation of both of them keeping these relationships going. It's like, we'll just have to, they both can only stand LA a little bit. So I think that's so interesting. I'm curious to see if it probably won't, because once again, at least Mabel's relationships never go past the seasons. They always like, yeah, something always happens and she ends up having to move on. So I'm sure the same thing is going to happen with Tauber. But we'll see. Maybe her and Oliver can make it work. I mean, this is the first time Oliver's really had anything extensive, like I said, since his divorce. So I think they might keep that going. I'm not sure about the Mabel of it all. We'll have to wait and see. We'll probably get little sprinkles here and there about what things mean for Oliver and Loretta going forward. But obviously it's like, yeah, this is a fresh start for her. New place, new opportunities for her career. She's on fire now after Death Rattle. But then also the whole situation with her and Dickie being able to have a fresh start as mother and son. What did this mean for Death Rattle going forward? Because, I mean, I guess we don't have, how do you, I figured it wasn't supposed to just be a one night only thing. I'm assuming it's supposed to like, now we're going to keep it going, but it's like, well, one of your leads is potentially going away, so you're going to have to find someone to fill in for Loretta, plus 2 of your major producers just got arrested, so it adds some buzz to the play as well, I guess, but it's like, maybe it was always meant to be a one night thing. I'd assume not. I guess you'd pad out those roles and it just kind of continues going forward. Because you'd also have to find someone else to play the leading man for that, considering Oliver stepped in. I don't know. Like I said, maybe it's just supposed to be like things kind of go sour like after this season and we just don't hear about Death Rattle the musical anymore. I don't know. The one thing I was surprised about, and we got a little update, but it was like, surprised the Joy situation never came back. But then it's like, Joy said, she sent me a romantic text. Oh, what does it say? She said, Scott says hi. It's like, that's not a romantic oh, God. I guess he assumed it was one, because it's like, she's talking to me at all, so that's progress. So it's like, I was so curious whether or not the Joy and Charles thing would ever come back around. And it's like, well, maybe in the future that will be something we see going forward. But what threw me for a loop was when Sass popped up. I was like, that's weird. The moment Sass popped up and it's like, Charles, I got to tell you something. I was like, Sass is going to die, isn't she? I was like, it felt weird, like a last minute appearance. I'm like, looking at the episode time, I'm like, there's only a few minutes left in this episode. So it's like, Sass is going to die. He's going to go get some particular line. And the moment like they're in the dark, quote unquote, Charles is in the dark whistling. I was like, it's not Charles, it's Sass. And Sass is about to get killed. Now the question then becomes, was it because the target was always Sass, or were they going after Charles? Because obviously every season they end with the setup for the new season. So I was like, okay, so where's it coming? I was like, there's no way they're going to end this like very like nonchalant of like, there's not going to be setup, but of course there's going to be setup. Now the question is, because obviously like season 2 to 3 obviously was the biggest like, wait, what? because we had like no context for it. Because every other season, like with the exception of season 2, which was like the murder took place like a year later. With the exception of that, like from season 1 to season 2 was like pretty immediate, and it's all, and I maybe that's the parallel they're going for, because how did season 1 end with Mabel going off to get something, and then the whole bunny situation happened, right? So I think the same thing is happening here, except it wasn't Charles that went off, it was Saz that went off and ended up getting shot. But we do see that Saz is writing something, so she's trying to leave a dying message, sorry. But like I said, the moment like Jane Lynch popped up, I was like, that feels like that's too on purpose. And she came in with like oh, I got to talk to you about something, Charles, which begs to question what would it have been about? Would it have been about Jan? Which I've been saying Joan the entire time, wasn't it? I just looked at it, I was like, her name is I thought her name was Joan. The character's name is Jan. Amy Ryan's character, the person who was like the killer from season 1. But I was like, I could have sworn her name was Joan, but it's Jan? Have I been saying that wrong? I must have been saying it wrong this entire time. I could have sworn it was Joan. That's why I was like, let me make sure. It's like, no, it's Jan. I was like, Jesus. Either way, changes and all that aside, I thought it was maybe it's something related to her, because she hasn't really been brought up in conversation, but we know like Saz and her were dating last season, so I can't remember if Saz had a whole thing about that in the one, and that's also the other thing too. Saz was only in one episode this season, because Saz made I think Saz was only in one episode season 1, but I think Saz made at least a few appearances in season 2, but either way, it's like he only popped up once, and it's like brought you back just to kill you off. I mean, yeah, that's a bullet wound in the chest area, so it's like, that seems pretty solidified. Probably, like I said, has enough energy to write a dying message, but that's sad. So, but it's going to be bittersweet, because that means like, hey, we're going to get more Jane Lynch next season, so that's pretty dope. But it's under the circumstances in which we're getting more Jane Lynch is going to be sad. I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But like I said, now the question then becomes, well, was Charles the target? Was Saz the target? That becomes the big thing. And I'm sure that's going to be a thing for Charles, who wants to feel more important than he actually kind of is. He can kind of get very like, oh, I'm very important, yada, yada, yada. But it's like, no, like now he has every right to be like, oh, someone actually is really gunning for me. And the question then becomes like, well, he is kind of a pretty boring dude, and maybe this will be us diving a little bit more into Charles' past to find out who would want him dead and for what reason. Would it be like built off of the events of this season, or will we have, like I said, deep diver into his past? Like I said, will this have anything to do with Jen? We'll ultimately have to wait and see. The show was renewed for a 4th season. In fact, the news of the renewal came out the day of the season finale, so how very serendipitous. So I'm very, very excited to see, first and foremost, what other celebrities are we going to get next season. Who was it that moved into... Oh, yeah, because Ben moved into what was Sting's place, then became Amy Schumer's place, became Ben's place. So the big cameo of like, okay, so who's going to be the next big cameo? Or, not even just cameo, because who's going to be the next... I mean, who knows? Because that person could be relegated to just a few cameos here and there. They might not be a big aspect of the season like Ben was, but who's the person that's going to take over that apartment now? They might not be a central character next season, but might see them pop in here and there like we did, Because wasn't Sting in it? Sting was only in like 1 or 2 episodes, wasn't it? I think Amy was in a few, and obviously all this revolved around Ben's murder, so he obviously played a bigger role. So who's going to get the apartment next? Also, what other, once again, we're going to get more Jane Lynch, obviously, but also who else, what other little cameos are we going to get, like, star and actor, or maybe musician-wise, celebrity-wise in general. So I'm curious about that. Something also that I was thinking about, I kept bringing up, what we never touched on at all, was when we haven't gotten anything about the podcast. We didn't get any of the podcast fans this season. To be fair, they haven't been putting out the podcast. Maybe it seems like that's all been like after the fact. So like they probably going to be and they probably might still release them weekly to week, but it might not be until the entire case is over, which once again, if they decide to go down the fan route, they could be complaining like, geez, like they ended up releasing all the podcasts after everything was done, at least we used to be a part of the investigation process of at least like, hey, while the episodes are coming out, they're figuring things out. But it's like, the only thing we got on the podcast front was the tease that Mabel put out. The teaser Mabel put out at a couple episodes back. But other than that, we haven't really got touched on the podcast stuff. I mean, yes, they were recording stuff this episode, but who knows what the release schedule, like whether they're going to like treat it like a binge model of like, yeah, it got all released at once, or whether it's like no, it just gets spaced out in between season 3 and 4. I'd assume season 4 is going to pick up immediately afterwards, like, 1 and 2 did, so, I mean, 2 to, 1, but you get what I'm saying, right? So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, I hope we do get more with the fans. Like I said, we got none of that at all. I mean, we got some fans like Talbert this season, obviously, but it's like we didn't get like our hardcores that we followed season 1 and season 2, who've got little pop-ins here and there from. So I'm curious to see if we get any of them next season as well. But yeah, that's kind of all I really wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.